Oh, Emma, you sorry, might be a bit muted there. There we
Oh,
go.
every time. Hello and welcome to tonight's live stream. We're so excited to have everyone here to join us. We have Angela who's going to talk about her journey through AIE and what she's been doing after. So I'll pretty much let everyone get straight into it because we're really excited to hear what Angela has to say. So take it away, Angela and Matt.
Awesome. Thanks, Emma. And for anyone watching tonight, thank you for joining. And also, if you have any questions, please do feel free to pop them in chat, and we'll do our best to get them answered by Angela or even myself throughout the night. But we only have half an hour with Angela, and thank you so much for being a part of the AIE live stream journey with us. So a big thank you for joining on. So let's jump straight into it, I reckon. I'm going to kick it off by starting with a favorite old question of mine. What is your favorite movie and why?
I always find that a really, really hard question to answer. But personally, the most favorite movie of mine is one that has left the most strongest impression. So it's Mr. Nobody, and not so much for visual effects, but more so for story and messaging behind it in terms of possibilities and just embracing the unknown and that kind of thing.
Was it a movie you watched when you were a child that you loved, or was it a more recent one? I'm not familiar, sorry.
Strangely enough, it was one that I watched during after my first year of university. And it was like a weird turning point. And I was like, oh, what choices do I make? And the movie kind of looks at how people can try to make choices and you can't tell where it's going to take you regardless of knowing everything or knowing nothing.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of very philosophical.
I like it. I like philosophical movies. I'll write it down afterwards, and I'm going to use that because I was flicking through Netflix as we always do and looking for a movie. So I reckon I'm going to add that to the to-watch list and give it a shot.
It's a bit of an odd one, yeah.
Awesome. All right, so that's your favorite movie. Let's, I guess, take it back to the start now and talk about your journey in film and VFX. So where did your journey as an artist begin?
I guess in terms of like just starting to create things in general would have been from when I was like maybe 6 or 7, and my sister likes drawing a lot, and I kind of just dabbled and kind of followed what she did, and I kept drawing throughout high school, and then after graduating I started doing some digital painting, and then that became my creative outlet for a while. And then also went into like costuming, and it just kept going. So it's just this constant pattern of, making.
Yeah. Okay, so you were a creative little kid, I guess, like from a young age.
Yeah. So a lot of time, I think it started from me copying for a while, because I just looked up to my sister. It's like, copy. Oh, this is really cool. This is fun.
Yeah.
And then, it kind of got me to meet people sometimes when they kind of know that you kind of draw. It's like, oh, cool. But I was the quiet type, so I didn't show too much of that.
Yeah. How much older is your sister than you?
2 years.
2 years. But did she play like a huge influence? Like you just kind of copied her throughout your childhood?
Yeah, huge influence. Like I just saw that she drew. I was like, let me join in on doing this with you, and it just became like our regular thing.
Does she, by any chance, happen to work as a 3D modeler?
No, apparently. She actually works in the graphic design side of the industry, the creative industry.
Yeah. A very creative family is what I'm hearing then.
We've had interesting pathways getting there, though.
Yeah. All right, so still remaining in the young area, at high school, what sort of student were you? So you talked about you were a bit more of a quiet one, but did you go through high school studying art and it was always kind of art focused, or did you experiment with other areas, and I guess what sort of journey did you have through that part of your life?
If I was to kind of look back, I was pretty much a quiet, studious, academic type student, actually. Like, I was introduced to art when I was in year 8, and I loved it. So it became, if it was an elective, if possible, I would choose it. But a lot of the time, like, after being able to choose subjects and all that and seeing marks, my brain liked to gamify things because I played a lot of games when I was growing up. So I thought subjects was like stats. So, I just kind of like build my stats so I could then be more versatile and do things with it afterwards. And that made me like a really, really academic kid.
Yeah.
And it got me to do like things like 4-unit English, 3-unit maths.
Yeah,
chemistry,
yeah,
physics, arts, just a bit of everything, just to kind of switch where my brain was at.
yeah, yeah. There's I guess you've done four. Was it the Suicide Five? Did you ever hear the Suicide Five? It's
No,
maths,
actually.
high level maths, high level English, physics, chemistry, and there was one other one I forget. Anyone in chat, if you remember the Suicide Five in school, type it in. But
Tell us more.
yeah, it was like the pathway that I just looked at, and I was like, no, absolutely no way. But there were some students like you who were just really academic and loved it. So,
I
but
was
you
pretty
paired it
bad at
with,
some of them though.
but
I
you paired it with
tried.
art though. So yeah, you paired it
Yeah.
with art. So there was always that outlet. So, oh,
Yeah.
nice. So then after school, how did you first hear about AIE?
Like right after high school, my friend from my primary school had actually wanted to get into the field, and she kind of was my drawing buddy back when we were like younger, and she recommended it to me. But me being the academic didn't want to waste my marks, so I was like, let me make the most of the academic side first. But
Yeah,
this thing was just like planted at the back of my head, and it's like, I will explore you one day.
yeah,
And then after I graduated uni, that was when I finally had that itch that came back to me with that reminder that this is the one thing I haven't explored yet. I need to find out before before I get any further.
yeah,
And then that's when I switched to just let myself dabble in AIE, do 3D, do art, do anything that's not academic,
yeah.
just to see if it
What
was
did you
something I
study?
liked.
What did you study at uni?
I did a combined degree of Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science,
Yeah.
and I stayed in for an extra year to do honors in pharmacology. So
Oh, and
yeah,
pharmacology.
5 years. There you
Okay.
go.
And then after that, you thought, more study. That's what I want to do.
I almost did it because it was a very high probability that I was going to continue with masters or PhD, but
Yeah.
had that one itch. I'm like, PhD or masters is a long commitment. I have this itch right now. Before it leaves me, before I commit to something else, just let me scratch that itch, and if I know for sure, then I'll commit, or then I'll go the other way,
Yeah.
depending on how it goes.
Well, considering you had a really like you enjoyed games as a child, when you were choosing your pathway then at AIE, did you look at the two different ones, and did you have a bit of the two different courses? Sorry, the game art and then also the film art, and have a bit of a internal struggle with which to choose?
I did. Like my first year was I did the July intake, and so
Yes.
you have a small cohort, and then you just kind of do everything in a much faster pace. And the constant
Yeah.
question that I had to my teachers like, "What am I good at? Do you think I should go to this way or that way?" And a lot of the time, they wouldn't give you a concrete answer because it's purely up to you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it kind of was up to me to then kind of weigh the pros and cons of what interests did each course offer me. And I liked certain pipelines, and then that's what caused me to gravitate towards one over the other.
Yeah. I actually get asked this a fair bit at, so I go to careers expos and speak with students in years 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12, and they always ask for a bit of advice on which area, and I guess like I have a very limited knowledge when it comes to doing the work myself. I'm not a 3D modeler, I'm not an artist, so I'd love to hear from you actually on any bits of advice for someone around that age, the 15 to 25 age, who is deciding on the two. What would be some key parts to think about possibly for them?
I think what tends to distinguish the two courses from what I've experienced is the game stream gives you a bit more of a art direction kind of role if you want to create your projects, and in your film stream, because it's more geared towards getting you ready for potentially live action type projects, some CG type projects, it's a little more it's got a more clear reference point all the time. So if you want to be super creative, the game stream gives you a bit more leeway to explore that, and the film side would mean you kind of have like more realistic type points of reference and a more, I guess, detail, like highly detail oriented type thing, because the pipeline allows for it.
Yeah.
While games would be like, hey, talking about optimization, how can we get this to work as best as possible without it losing performance and still looking good as well.
Yeah. I've definitely
So-
been there where your old computer's struggling to load the image in it. Yeah. In the
Yeah, so the
game.
games
Yeah.
would be like, you need to get good at that. Like,
Yeah.
make it look good, make it load fast.
Yeah.
And the other side is you can make it look amazing, but you need to have the patience to actually let it churn through and meet the reference point that you have as well.
Yeah. Okay, I'll remember that, and I'll echo your opinion or your advice to some of the students that I will speak with over the next few months. So thank you.
Also, actually, in keeping with that line of thought, though, the people
Yeah.
that I've met, actually, there is quite a high level of flexibility between the two fields anyway. So a lot of people who have worked in the film industry for a while have dabbled in doing things in the game side because they do have a transferable skill set.
Yeah.
So you will have like people who've been like 16 years in industry and they've worked in VR, or they've done a game project and they've been in TV and then they've been in film, and it's
Yeah.
quite transferable.
Yeah. Okay, so that I have met a few industry experts now who have worked in both. So it is, the skill sets are very transferable. But just in that advice, or I guess when they're first deciding between the two, it can be a bit daunting, I think, for them. And especially like when I was 15, I just didn't know the industry that I was going to work in. So it's nice to be able to educate the students on, hey, like, yes, if you want to work in games and film, like you can. It is an option that you have these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, makes them,
It's
puts
nice
a
to
big
keep
smile
your
on their
mind
face.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so when you got to AIE then, what was it like in terms of your study life, expectation versus reality?
Expectation was basically I didn't know what to expect because I came from a highly academic background where you do a lot of theory, you write tons of
Yeah.
essays. I did like 4,000 word essays, and once you got into AI, it's like, hey, sit at a computer, learn the keys, like it's muscle memory. You have to do things over and over before it starts sinking in, and then you understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, when you drive a car, you know the functions, and then it starts becoming second nature after a while, but it's a lot of doing
Yeah.
as opposed to like reading about. And that I thought was very different because I did labs, like wet labs, you do stuff, and it kind of just flew right over me a lot of the time, even though I was an academic, right? Just flew right over me. And the cool thing about AIE was because, especially in the July intake, your cohort's much smaller. So when you're like trying to figure out how to press stuff, you've triggered something wrong, you've got the teacher or you've got the classroom assistant as well, and they're quite ready, like available. So you can ask them, and that gives you immediate feedback. And that helps you consolidate and remember why things happen and stuff a bit more, which for me helped. And I didn't know that was my learning style until after that kind of started happening. And I'm like, okay, it's clicking.
So you needed to try a bit of both, like a bit more theory-based and then a bit more practical.
Yeah, because I think once I was in uni as well, I was very hands-off. So I was a type who had questions but wouldn't openly ask them because you didn't know if you'd get the response yet. So you kind of start digging around a bit. But here, because there was that responsiveness and it was immediate, it helped to know that I could ask. And that encouraged that like habit of, hey, I don't get why this doesn't work. Is this like something wrong? Am I doing something? And it helps with the troubleshooting.
Yeah. Yeah, me personally, I thrive in a hands-on environment. I was very much like that at school. And I know the students here, when I see them in that hands-on environment as well, like you can see them thrive, and it goes a long way to like take their confidence and to boost it and to make them feel good about what they're doing. So for me, I'm the same. Practical learning is the way I learn as well. So if anyone out there who enjoys practical learning, like, definitely IA is a place for you. All right, so when it comes to then the students currently studying visual effects here at AIE, do you have any quick words of advice? Oh, sorry, we've just got Emma actually who's just popped in as well. So, and she's on mute again. She loves it. Loves the mute button. Oh, no, still on mute.
We're back. Okay.
There we go.
So this leads in what you were saying, Matt. We've had a comment in the chat ask a question, saying like, is there any more skills that you want to learn? So leading in with the students, what they're learning at the moment, is there any more programs and software that you want to actually start learning and continue to build those skills, Angela?
Oh, for me, I've started pretty much learning things like, I guess, Marvelous Designer, which is a cloth simulation slash costume drafting type
Yeah.
software, and that ties in closely with doing character work and I guess just getting forms and costumes for characters. And I thought that would be like a good base, I guess, to help with sculpting. And that's just a supplementary kind of tool, though, because a lot of the time people can make things in the traditional way. But I thought, some new tools make you, I guess, get to certain forms faster.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the fundamentals.
Yeah, awesome. So, any current students watching, check that one out and see if you want to go more into the costume design route. So, yeah.
That's cool.
I'd say
Awesome.
ZBrush,
Thanks, Emma.
though, would be like,
Yeah,
Just
ZBrush
go
is
for
a
it.
great one. Definitely. Cool. Well, I'll leave you guys to get back to it. I'll come pop in if we've got more questions.
ZBrush is I played around with ZBrush a little bit just here at AIE, and I'm actually starting a certificate 3 in screen and media in July. I'll be doing it after hours, just because I really like it. I really enjoy it, and ZBrush definitely for me looks like one of the programs I can get a bit addicted to. So yeah, I have a feeling a lot of hours of my life are about to disappear to ZBrush.
That was me when I first started learning it.
Yeah. Awesome. So thank you for the question. So let's jump a little bit ahead now. So once you had graduated from AIE, let's talk about that start of the journey then, like looking for a job. What did you first do when you got that job? And I guess tell us a little story of that part of your life.
I guess just to continue on from the question of what advice I'd have for a VFX student as well.
Sorry. Yes.
That's okay. Is pretty much I would call it like a very P-oriented kind of approach, where it pretty much hinges on you being proactive and doing things like practicing doing projects, practicing peopling, which I would consider like volunteering in things, and just practicing sharing your work is something that you should start much earlier than when you graduate. Because I was very studious in the sense that I'm like very one-track minded. I will make my studies like count towards everything. I didn't really look outside the box until graduation hit, and I'm like, oh no, I'm out in the field. What do I do? I should have done this earlier. And we get encouraged to, but my brain was like, study base. I need to get this right. So what I would say is pretty much immerse yourself in the community by firstly practicing being around people by either volunteering, going to meetups, or pretty much, what else is there? Just joining like competitions, challenges, that type of thing. You get contact with the community that way. And just to do your own personal project. Yeah. Because sometimes you do your own projects, people ask to collaborate, sometimes you find artworks that you really like, and then you make contact with the artist who made it. And that, I think, makes you kind of build a community. And I was a pretty anxious kind of like student. So basically, when you go out for the first time, if you didn't immerse yourself as much, everything seems unknown. So it gets daunting because it looks unknown. And so my brain was like, I need to, volunteer, apply for something. And what I volunteered for was SIGGRAPH. And that was like in Vancouver. And I'm like, I don't know if I can get there, but I'll apply. And I'll see if they let me, they'll accept me. If they do, then I'll figure out a way to get there. So I did that. And then that introduced a lot of opportunities, and just met tons of people with different walks of life. And that was very kind of eye-opening.
Yeah, I actually had a question the other day from a student who said, like, I'm not great with communication in terms of his skills, but he said, is AI a place that I can learn them? And I said to him, I was like, I've seen a lot of students come in from even just doing a certificate, and by the end of the certificate, or in their first year, by the end of the first year, they've developed social skills, they've developed that communication ability through teamwork. So absolutely, and I think, am I safe in saying that you've probably gained a lot of those skills as well with your time at AIE?
I'd say definitely. Like I was in intensive. Basically, I was like heads down work on stuff. If someone asked, maybe I'll respond. I'll try to chime in here and there, but I kind of didn't get too involved until like mid second year maybe. And even then, I was like in my corner, like, you know, kind of like, hey, if anyone spoke to me, I spoke to them, but I didn't know where to start a lot of the time until like volunteering stuff kind of happened, and you know, people were like trying to form groups to go on a road trip to see an open day or open studio in like Melbourne and that kind of stuff. Then I'm like, okay. But you know, if you volunteer a bit sooner, you kind of start learning to open up and ease up a bit sooner.
Yeah.
And I'm obligation driven, so I'm like, it's my role to socialize, so I need to learn now.
Yeah. and then like fast forward a little bit, now you're on a live stream, so well, you've come a long way. So that's full credits to you. All right, so let's then talk about post AIE now. So once you'd graduated, what was it like looking for that first job? Where did you find that first job? And just take us through your journey at that part.
I think after graduating, I was pretty much like at a stage where I let myself for a whole month do nothing, because you know, being all in study for a while, my brain just needed that break. And then after that, I started looking at internships, just local internships or anything, just to build up the confidence to start applying for jobs, even if it wasn't like a full-blown like junior role or something like that. I just wanted that experience of applying. And doing that, I got a response from Buck, which was that first studio that I started at. And they were like, hey, come in for a chat. Let's discuss your work and what you would like to learn. And that's where I landed my first role as a 3D intern. And that was a 6-month contract. And even when I was there, I kept an eye out on pretty much competitions and something called the Rookies, which has been I guess a very big competition that has been introduced recently as a early careers type platform for students to share their work without having the intimidation of professionals also submitting work in the same platform. And so I made that a goal as well. During that year, if I didn't land the next official job, the criteria was you are disqualified if you have more than 1 year of professional experience. I definitely didn't have that. So I made a goal. I will just keep applying until I have 1 year of full experience, just to you know, get a sense of getting your work seen. And then they also offered internships as a result of those applications, and that then led to the next thing that I did, and that was when I ended up at Plastic Wax as a junior artist as well during that same year.
Nice. And how did you find being a junior artist at Plastic Wax? Was that a big learning curve, or I guess once again like expectation versus reality?
I think it was a big learning curve in the sense that when you first go in, you don't know what the expectation of delivery time is. As a junior, you've never done a project for, you know, someone who's like a lead or something like that, so you don't know if this is a good enough time for like one asset. So you're like, do I hand this over? And something that I learned while I was at Buck prior to that was pretty much to ask at least to find out the priority on the thing, because a lot of the time you have a few things on your list, and you know, for someone who doesn't have the experience to know which one's complex or what the priority is, you're like, where do I begin? And so you know, it's a bit of asking, and also learning to ask the people on the same team as well. And kind of like tag team a bit, say like, you know, ask what's needed here and there, and it helps to kind of get you comfortable with asking. And pretty much like, you know, just set it, like building up the sense of what's standard expectations for your level, so you can kind of meet that as you start.
We do have, I've just got a couple questions that have come through very quickly, so I'm going to jump to one if that's okay. So we do have one of the questions as asked, is 3D intern generally the first job people do after graduation, and what was the office culture like?
Is 3D the first job that people do?
3D intern,
Oh, yeah, 3D intern. Not necessarily, actually. At AIU, we try to train everyone so that you can perform as a junior artist to begin with. And personally, I had a kind of confidence kind of thing that was kind of holding me back. So I would like that kind of internship status to kind of ease me into the industry, which is why I started looking at internships as opposed to jump to a junior role. by all means, a lot of people can if they've actually built up their portfolio to that level, and most people do.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much a bit of where you are currently at and where your portfolio is at, and then you can direct where you want to go.
Yeah.
I was still working on the confidence thing.
Yeah.
So that was a side thing. That was a side project as well.
I know. If I could somehow give a lot of our students just not imaginary, but if I could just conjure confidence for students, I think it would do them like fantastic. Like some of the artists we have here at AI create the most beautiful artwork, and I go to ask if I can use it on a social post or if I can have it on USB to use it in like a presentation, and they're always like a bit shy, and they're always like, oh, it's not very good, and I'm sitting there like, it looks 10 out of 10, like it's amazing. So I feel like, yes, if you're a student out there, like confidence is fantastic. So work towards building on it.
And the main thing I think
so you go. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the main thing that I think some people
go.
kind of misunderstand about confidence is you don't need to be out there and loud or anything. It's just pretty much having the belief that this is okay.
Yeah.
Some people kind of are not quite used to that, especially as artists who have done stuff by their on their own time and stuff like that by themselves for a long time. There's no sense of, does this kind of meet a certain standard or not? And people start kind of like wavering.
Yeah. We've got a couple follow-up questions as well, or from a different viewer. So I'm going to quickly shoot these ones out because we don't have a huge amount of time left, and I really want to talk to you about your current role. No, it's good. I want to talk to you about your current role with Flying Bark. So I'll just quickly ask these ones. So what advice would you give to current AIE students for finding a studio after graduating with a positive working environment? And they've also asked, are there places that you've worked where the culture is one you would recommend, and any advice for avoiding toxic workplaces?
Oh, this is an interesting.
So it's a bit of a full-on combination of questions there.
Okay, so I think the first thing is, regardless of what industry you're in, there are certain key points that you should have in a workplace to count as a healthy work culture. So it helps to have worked in any industry to kind of set your expectations of what you're willing to accept as, I guess, respectful and, I guess, in alignment with what you value.
Yeah.
And personally, like, sussing it out is not very easy because a lot of the time you do just kind of find it when you're in the midst. But the main thing to remember is when you're interviewing, you get the chance to ask questions. And the questions that you ask can both be about how they work or what they care about as well. And opposite would be they would ask you so they could see if you care about the same thing. So there's a chance to kind of find if your perspective and values meet, so that the place would support that particular value that you have in you.
Yeah.
So some people kind of get nervous at an interview. You wouldn't ask that because it's a bit of a precarious situation, but it's a good opportunity to find out more about what they care about as much as they want to find out what you care about.
Yeah. And that, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was about to say, that possibly leads into then, they did ask any recommendations for where like there is a positive culture, and your current work with Flying Bark Productions, I believe that would tie in quite nicely with where you are now. So if you would like to just quickly speak about that, that would be great as well.
Yeah, sure. Like, I guess any work culture, a lot of the time is you see that work culture is really healthy when people really respect each other, they hear each other, and they're very mindful about how another person understands each other. So, at Flying Bark, we have that where people are very laid back and they're also very respectful of, what another person's willing to share. If they prefer a certain way, they will ask. And they also have dogs. So people bring in their dogs as well. And that kind of just gets everyone in this kind of like positive vibe because people start getting to know each other without planning to have that interaction as well. And it's really nice. So a lot of the time it's just everyone's just very mindful of each other, and you can literally just turn around and talk to the person next to you and ask if you get stuck.
Yeah.
And that then once again encourages the questions and collaboration when you're in that workplace, so it doesn't feel like everyone's like their own kind of island and is closed off. Yeah, so they're very friendly. Everyone that I've met, and the whole team is very hyped.
Well, dogs will do that. Dogs, dogs will do that. It's a fun environment. When I was visiting the Sydney campus at AIE recently, they had a dog there that was just around the campus that they have there nearly, I think, every week, Jess said, and I was just so jealous. I was like, oh, Bruce Burrell. Sorry?
Was that Ori? Was it the white fluffy?
No, I thought it was a darker color. I don't know. I'd have to check with Jess what the name of the dog was, but it was incredibly cute, and it lifted my morale. So
yes, it makes a huge difference.
I think I need to speak to the head of school here in Adelaide and possibly get a campus dog. Awesome. So then at Plastic Wax now, Flying Buck Productions, your role now is a 3D modeler. So do you want to talk us through your experience now and getting a bit more technical with it, like your role, day in the life of Angela?
Day in the life of, oh no.
Yeah.
So I guess a lot of the time when it comes to like working as a modeler, especially because I'm a junior modeler, you would report to a lead or a supervisor, because they're the point of contact to say this asset is good enough to forward on, and then we can pretty much put that up and stop work on that and continue with the next thing. So for me, in a day-to-day kind of thing, I go in, we get assigned tasks, and they have priorities depending on what the client's expecting by when. And so we kind of work through them in that order, and working through them basically means either you build an object from scratch with reference that a client has given you, or based on a bit of textual descriptions to help you figure out what exactly they're looking for. Or sometimes it would be receiving assets from another modeler to just address some extra revisions, or receiving assets from other studios to then integrate into our actual workflow as well. Yeah. And it's kind of like a very varied role depending on what the current task is on hand.
Yeah, and what the client needs.
Yeah, so sometimes we'd end up borrowing things that they have, we build stuff on top of it, sometimes we build from scratch.
Yeah.
It's a mix of that.
What are some of the pieces of software you use?
The most common one is basically Maya, but there have been different types of packages that people can use if it's their kind of preferred package, and freelancers would do that and stuff as well, but primarily we use Maya.
And this one's going to be a bit tricky. You might not be able to answer it off the top of your head or without, I guess, a computer showing, but for any junior artist out there trying to learn Maya, do you have any bits of advice for them with Maya?
Trying to learn Maya. For juniors, I'd say just make lots of things. Like, it's all muscle memory, lots of practice. There's a thing called retopology and the thing called topology, where it's pretty much the grid and the mesh that sits over your shape, and that takes a lot of practice to start seeing patterns that count as healthy for your 3D mesh and will look good and hold the forms. And that also requires you to go through a lot of bad versions before you realize what is good and what is not.
Yeah.
So, things like timed projects help, just to get a sense of how long it takes to do something as well. Yep. Redo it. Do you get faster at it? For juniors, a lot of the time, the difference is your troubleshooting skills are a bit limited because you have limited experience, and your speed is a bit slow because you have that limited troubleshooting experience, as well as the direction of knowing what course of action is the fastest for said shape, because you haven't done it before. Hence, more projects, the more better you practice your troubleshooting, the more times you can see different contexts of why one thing works and one thing doesn't.
Yeah.
And just practice. Lots and lots of practice.
Lots of practice. All right. I asked that with the disclaimer that it was for current artists, but really it was for me for my screen and media certificate next semester. So with your advice now, I feel confident. Yeah, spending a lot of time in Maya, I think, is ahead of me as well. Zbrush and Maya.
Yeah. Like, I think a lot of the time when it comes to developing as an artist is just learning how to see things. Like, see topology, see certain shapes. Like, even just doing faces now, I have a certain, like, areas that I have to look at all the time because I keep missing or something like that from the notes that I would get.
Yeah. So just practice.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we have gone a little bit over time, which is perfectly fine because what I knew we absolutely would. Emma, so do we have any final questions from viewers that you want to ask, or any information?
We had just one final question asking, what have you done to practice? But I think that can be summed up with study at 8IE and just spend a lot of your spare time drawing, like you said earlier. So yeah, did you want to add any final tips there with what did you do to practice?
Yeah, I definitely have heaps. But a lot of the time practice is hard when it's something that you're not good at. So a lot of the time, try to find something that you like, or frame it as something that you like. Like, I'm terrible at making everyday objects like a telephone or a hard surface thing. They just get lumpy. But I like certain manga and stuff like that, and I would find a room in that particular manga that I really like because there's like a driver of, the characters live here, this is used for this and this, and I start making one thing at a time because I want to make the room.
And we did have one question about hard surfaces. You've just reminded me. What software you would use to make a hard surface? Would it be ZBrush?
No. Okay, ZBrush is what they use for like more like organic things, which is like, human kind of soft volumes. You can use ZBrush, but you have to spend a bit of time to learn certain tools that will help make things better. A lot of the time, the quality of your surface is lumpy. So Maya would usually be the preferred method. Otherwise, you can start off in ZBrush, but clean up in Maya, so you get nicer, smoother surfaces.
Awesome. Well, since we are pushed for time, I will move on, but thank you so much for that. And if you have any more questions or anything, feel free to come along or you can send a question via our website here and we can get one of our teachers to answer it. So if you are interested in studying at AIE like Angela did, we have a July intake coming up in our diploma courses, so that's something to look into. Or we've got a really fun event coming up in June. We've got our information evening. So if you go to our events, you can always see our information evening, and that's a great way to come along, talk to some teachers who teach the subjects and find out more about the course and get your questions answered from people in the industry. So that's it from me and Matt and Angela. If you do have any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll try to go back in and answer as many as possible. But any final words of advice, Angela, before we head off for the evening?
That's so hard to say. Practice. and be proactive. Be proactive.
It's the number one lesson from tonight is be proactive and practice. Well, thank you so much everyone for joining us. Again, if you've got any questions, feel free to send us through to us on the website. But if not, we'll see you next time for our next live stream. Thanks. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye everyone.
Bye.